Welcome to the Friday Night Campfire Stories. My name is Rob and I will be your host for this evening. So we have come to an end of another story. This is the final chapter of my story, Confinement. If you haven't checked out chapters 1, 2, and 3, I would suggest doing that now before you get into chapter 4. I know where we left off last week might have left you a little wondering of how the story could go on, but I did promise that there was more of the story to tell. And we're going to be doing that today, and I promise you, you're not going to want to miss it. So, real quick before we get started, we are trying to hit 50 subscribers by the end of January. So if you could help me out by clicking that subscribe button, it's absolutely free down below the video, would mean the absolute world to me. This is the last time we're going to do a Friday Night Campfire Stories this month. So it would mean a lot if we could still hit 50 subscribers. So if you could do that, much would be appreciated. But without further ado, let's waste no more time. This is the finale of my story, Confinement. Confinement, Chapter 4. The coroners arrived on the scene to remove the bodies. Both of them had a stretcher with one of the corpses on each. "This is new for me. What do you think happened here?" says the first coroner. "Only God will know now," says the other one. "I mean, she had to kill him, right?" "Why do you think that?" "Well, Baylor, he was blind and deaf. He couldn't have done anything, right?" "Baylor? Wait, this is Baylor and Alex Ingram?" "That's what it says in our report." "No way. I know them. Everyone knows them. They're part of the Ingram family." "I don't know them from here, though. I remember them before they moved, and the town they lived in before," the second coroner says. "Wait, did you say Baylor's been blind and deaf from birth?" "That's what they've always told us," says the first coroner. "That's weird because I remember Baylor, but he was normal when I knew him." The story that had played out in the house in that small town was just the surface of what this family has been through. Let's take it back even more than 6 months ago. Mr. and Mrs. Ingram were famous in their previous town, just as they were in their adopted town. Mr. Ingram was a judge who had a lot of love for his community and always had a heart for people. Even people who would be sentenced to court, he would try and find ways to understand where they came from and why they did what they did. He would even give them sentences that seemed light for their crimes committed. Mrs. Ingram ran a pharmacy that had the cheapest cost in the United States. She went out of her way to ensure that the people in the town were able to get the best deals for their prescriptions, even paying for some of the customers who didn't have the funds to pay for their medicines. Then there was Baylor. He was a beloved kid, a normal, sight-seeing, sound-hearing kid. He played football and basketball, he loved cars, and always finished at the top of his class. All around, they were the dream family that everyone had wished for. Finally, there was the older sister, Alex, who was the all-American girl. She was 4 years older than Baylor. Everyone in school loved her. All the boys wanted to be with her, and all the girls wanted to be her. She finished on the top of the class every single year, and all the teachers had nothing but good notes on her. However, Alex had a bit of a dark side that no one knew about. What Alex did at school compared to her home life seemed to be the polar opposite of the girl who she was portraying. She was able to hide it from everyone, even her parents, until she and Baylor had to share a bedroom for 1 month, while Alex's bedroom was being renovated. One night, Baylor had gotten home from football. When he went to his room, he noticed the door was locked. He knocked a couple of times, finally banging on it, asking for Alex to open the door. "Go away, Baylor," yelled Alex. Baylor, being the younger brother, had learned a couple tricks from his younger days. One was how to open a locked door in their house. Within a couple of seconds, he opened the door and saw his sister in bed with 3 other guys from the high school football team. Traumatized, Baylor slammed the door, ran downstairs, and told their parents what was going on upstairs. Mr. and Mrs. Ingram went upstairs to confront their daughter, catching one of the boys struggling to get out the window before they got to the room. Alex envied her brother, but in the reality, he was just looking out for his sister. She was too young to be doing that type of stuff with much older men. This was just the start of what Baylor would uncover from his sister's reality. A few nights later, while both children were supposed to be sleeping, Baylor was awoken by the sound of movement coming from Alex's bed, only to discover that she was doing hardcore drugs. "Alex, what are you doing?" Baylor asked with worry. "Don't worry about it, brat. It helps me sleep," she explained. "That stuff can kill you." "Hasn't done it yet, and I swear if you ever tell Mom and Dad, you will forever regret that decision." Baylor rolled back over and went to sleep, but the next day, he couldn't contain his emotions. He was severely worried about his sister's health and well-being. He finally told his parents, who confronted her later that evening. Even after she was grounded, she still lived the same way, still abusing drugs, sneaking out to meet with older men. Baylor would tell his parents every time, but nothing would be done, just a stern talking to. Finally, Alex had heard enough of her younger brother squealing everything that she did to their parents. One day after school, she would go to her mother's pharmacy. She was there to help out for the day, to get an allowance to get some spending money for the weekend. But in reality, she was there to look for 3 types of prescriptions that she had read about online. Throughout the day, she would find them and sneak them into her pocket. When she got home, she and her brother prepared for bed. When Baylor had gotten up to use the bathroom one final time, she had taken the pills she had stolen, smashed them up, and put them in her brother's water on his nightstand. Baylor returned to bed and took a giant gulp of water before falling asleep. The next morning was awoken by a scream coming from Baylor's bed. The drugs had worked. Baylor went to the hospital and was told they were not sure how it happened, but he is gone, blind and deaf, permanently. Alex seemed so scared and worried on the outside, but she actually was relieved to know she would be able to have as many guys over as she wanted, and Baylor wouldn't be able to hear them. She could do whatever drugs her heart desired because he wouldn't see them. The really sad part was that a week later, Alex would just return to her bedroom. Baylor wouldn't have heard or seen anything either way. A few days after the incident, Mr. and Mrs. Ingram received a phone call about the toxicology report about what drugs were inside of Baylor. When Mrs. Ingram heard, she had gone to check her inventory at her pharmacy. Lo and behold, they were missing, and only one person was at fault. That night, Alex confessed to her parents everything. She explained that her brother was going to ruin their family's reputation and couldn't let him get away with it. Mr. and Mrs. Ingram were shocked to hear this, but instead of punishing their daughter for revoking all their son's senses, they put their house on the market the next day and moved across the state to start their new lives. Their new lives as the loved Judge Ingram, who is all about the community and helping others. The best pharmacist in the United States, Mrs. Ingram, who takes care of every one of her customers and helps those who are in need of cheaper prescriptions. Alex Ingram, the all-American girl who is on the top of her class and is loved by all of her classmates. And finally, Baylor Ingram, the unfortunate tale of a boy born with no sight or hearing, but is still loved and taken care of by their family. It took some time for Baylor's other senses to heighten, but as soon as he was able to get accustomed to his new life, he had one thing on his mind: revenge. Alex had moved out at this time to live with her new boyfriend, who was 23, and lived in his own apartment. Baylor was being taken care of during the day by Nurse Rose. His mom and dad would come home and barely see Baylor because they saw him as an abomination to their family. If he would have just kept his mouth shut and let Alex live her life, they wouldn't be in this mess. One evening, after Nurse Rose had left and his parents went to sleep, Baylor had gotten up and grabbed his knife. He went to the car. He was able to get under the car and find and snap the brake line. The next morning, the news played, which showed both Alex and Baylor's parents had died in a car crash hitting a tree that morning. 2 down, 1 to go, Baylor thought. Alex, after leaving home, would never return to see her brother. Even at our parents' funeral, she stayed in the back. She knew that he was behind the crash. her parents were the safest drivers and wouldn't put themselves in danger of their lives coming to an end earlier than they were supposed to. Alex lived with her boyfriend until she graduated college and got a corporate level position in New York City. But with the pandemic striking, she never made it to getting an apartment in New York City. She stayed in hotels as her job told her they would be working remotely from now on. This inspired her to live all over the world. Why be confined to a single city? She would travel all over the world, living in all different types of hotels and resorts, experiencing cultures that peasants who work hard for their money would never get to see. It was on a trip to Brazil that she would meet this boy who stole her heart. She thought he was perfect. She asked him to go travel the world with her, and they had the perfect love story. He was the cherry on top of the dream life that she felt she was due. However, illness struck her new man, and he became deathly ill. This caused her to go back to her hometown. He was unable to get any type of prescriptions due to him not being from that country. No doctor would see him or anything. The hospitals would give him lower rate prescriptions to help with the pain, but not well enough to get him any better. This caused Alex to return home for the first time in years. She used to go to her mom's pharmacy and take whatever she wanted or needed, but her mom had died years before. She instead made a phone call to the pharmacy that her mother used to own. She put in a prescription pretending to be a doctor. The pharmacy accepted the prescription, and it all seemed to work. An hour later, Alex went to the pharmacy, only to see 3 policemen waiting at the desk for her. Everything would have gone smoothly if it wasn't for the pharmacist calling the doctor back to ask how many pills they needed. Alex was arrested and taken to jail. While in jail for that night, she was told that her boyfriend had died in their hotel room. If only she would have known in less than a year's time they would be reunited in the afterlife. Baylor had one purpose in life. He lost his sight and hearing. He was patient and waited for his time. The once perfect family was buried next to each other in their family cemetery. Although they lay 6 feet deep, Baylor came out on top. He achieved his life mission, and Baylor got his revenge. I told y'all you would not want to miss the finale. I'm glad that you didn't. Hope that you guys did enjoy. That is going to do it for today. That's going to do it for Confinement. That story will now be added to the shelf of stories that we have told on the channel. But have no fear, we will be back, but not next week, because next week is one of those weird Fridays that it's the 5th Friday of a month, only happens a few times a year. So there will not be a new story next week, although I do ask that you do show up because there is a very, very special video I have to share with all of you. So definitely come back next Friday, same exact time, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 6 Pacific time, for that big video. Like I said, I'm very excited to be sharing it with you guys. So that'll be next Friday, and then the Friday afterwards, we will be starting a brand new story. Same exact time as always on Friday. We make videos 3 times every single week. Every Monday we do an episode of Echoes of the Past, which is my paranormal haunted history series that I do. Every Wednesday we do an episode of Far From Fiction, which is my true crime series. And then of course every single Friday, the Friday Night Campfire stories will be brought to you here on the channel. So like I said earlier in the video, we are trying to get to 50 subscribers by the end of January. So if you can help me out in any way by clicking that, would mean a lot to me. Be sure to click the like button as well. That also helps. And then also there will be a new video tomorrow, as always. The day after we finish a story, I put the full story up on the channel. That way, in case anybody in the future wants to watch the whole thing, or maybe you're going on a car ride or something and just need something to listen to for an hour or so, you have that available for you. But anyway, that is going to do it for today. Hope you guys did enjoy. Thank you for spending a little bit of your evening here with me.